Here's the truth. No one tells you about avoidance. They can run to the other side of the planet, block you on every platform, and convince themselves they're moving on. But they cannot truly forget you without your energetic permission. You hold more psychological power over their emotional state than you realize, and they remain invisibly tethered to you through threads you didn't even know you were holding. While you're focused on your own healing and wondering if they ever think about you, they're unconsciously tuned into your emotional frequency. Like a radio that can't change stations, your anger keeps them connected through guilt. Your sadness maintains their importance through regret. Your hope feeds their ego through validation. Even your hatred proves they still matter enough to generate strong emotions. What you don't understand is that every feeling you hold about them creates an energetic cord that prevents them from achieving the peace they claim to want. The ability to move forward isn't just about time, new relationships, or therapy. It's fundamentally dependent on your emotional relationship with the experience you shared. They can't fully release what happened between you until you do. They remain psychologically bound to monitor your energy, to sense your emotional state, to unconsciously check whether you've truly let them go or are still carrying pieces of your connection. This isn't mystical nonsense. It's psychological reality. The human nervous system, especially one shaped by attachment trauma, remains hypervigilant to threats and unresolved connections. Your continued emotional investment in their behavior, your pain about their choices, your anger about their treatment of you, all of this keeps them energetically engaged with your dynamic even when they're physically absent. You influence their peace of mind more than any new partner could because you represent unfinished business in their psychological landscape. You are the witness to their deepest fears made manifest, the person who saw them choose fear over love, the living reminder of their greatest failure. Until you release your grip on that narrative, not for their sake, but for your own freedom, they remain bound to the story you're both still writing in your separate worlds. The most powerful thing you can do isn't win them back or prove your worth or show them what they lost. It's to genuinely, completely, energetically let go of your need for them to be different than they are. When you stop needing them to acknowledge their mistakes, stop hoping they'll realize what they lost, stop caring whether they're happy or miserable without you, that's when you cut the invisible strings that have been keeping both of you trapped in a dance that ended long ago but never truly concluded. The invisible strings that bind them to you, the connection between you and your avoidant ex, operates on frequencies deeper than conscious awareness, creating an invisible tether that physical distance cannot sever. While they may have blocked your number and deleted your photos, they cannot block the psychological wavelength you established during your relationship. Your emotional state continues to influence their nervous system in ways they don't understand and probably couldn't articulate if they tried. Think of it like phantom limb syndrome. When someone loses a physical appendage but continues to feel sensation where it used to be, your relationship created neural pathways in their brain, established emotional patterns in their system, and built energetic connections that don't simply disappear because they decided to end things. They may have removed you from their external world, but they cannot surgically extract you from their internal landscape without your cooperation. The avoidance hypervigilant nervous system, already programmed to scan for threats and monitor for abandonment, remains unconsciously attuned to your energy even after separation. They might not actively think about you every day, but their system continues to sense your emotional weather patterns. When you're in pain, their anxiety increases without clear cause. When you're angry, their guilt surfaces unexpectedly. When you're moving on, their fear of being forgotten creates mysterious restlessness they can't explain. This isn't about them still loving you or wanting you back. It's about the psychological reality that humans who've shared intimate emotional territory remain energetically connected until both parties consciously and completely release the bond. Your nervous system learned to regulate alongside theirs during the relationship, creating a co-regulatory pattern that doesn't simply switch off when the relationship ends. Watch how they unconsciously seek information about your emotional state through mutual friends, social media stalking, or carefully crafted casual inquiries. They tell themselves they're just curious or making sure you're okay, but really they're checking the emotional barometer because their system needs to know whether you've truly let go. Their peace depends on sensing that you're no longer holding on to pain, anger, or hope related to your shared experience. The invisible strings are strongest around the emotional charge you hold about their behavior. Every time you replay conversations in your mind, rehearse what you should have said, imagine confrontations where you finally make them understand, you're feeding energy into a connection they're trying to escape but cannot. Your mental rehearsals keep them psychologically present in your life, which keeps you psychologically present in theirs. They often experience unexplained emotional waves that correspond to your processing cycles. When you're having a particularly difficult day missing them, they might feel sudden sadness or nostalgia they can't place. When you're working through anger about their treatment of you, they might experience guilt or defensiveness without any external trigger. When you're finally feeling genuinely happy without them, they might panic about being forgotten or feel compelled to reach out. The strings are reinforced by your continued emotional investment in their growth, healing, or recognition of their mistakes. Every time you hope they'll learn from what happened, wish they would apologize, or imagine scenarios where they realize what they lost, you're maintaining an energetic connection to their psychological development. You're essentially keeping a part of yourself stationed in their emotional world, monitoring for changes that might validate your experience. Your trauma bonding with them created what psychologists call energetic entanglement, a state where your emotional systems remain partially merged even after physical separation. This is why you might feel their emotions suddenly, dream about them during significant moments in their life, or experience unexplained anxiety when they're struggling, even without any conscious contact. The most powerful aspect of these invisible strings is that they operate through your subconscious attachment to the story you shared. As long as you hold unfinished emotional business about your relationship, unresolved hurt, unprocessed anger, unfulfilled hope for closure, you remain energetically available to their psychological field. They can sense this availability even when they're trying their hardest to forget you. Breaking these strings requires more than going no contact or starting new relationships. It demands that you complete your emotional business with the experience independently without needing anything from them to feel whole. Until you genuinely stop caring about their opinion of you, their understanding of what happened, or their emotional state without you, part of your energy remains invested in their internal world, keeping both of you bound to a story that's supposed to be finished. Your forgiveness is their freedom. The most counterintuitive truth about your relationship with an avoidant is that your anger, hurt, and resentment actually keep them more connected to you than love ever did. While you're focused on how much they hurt you and how unfairly they treated you, you're creating an energetic prison that holds both of you captive to a dynamic that's supposed to be in the past. Your forgiveness isn't just about your healing, it's literally the key to their psychological freedom. Understand that holding on to justified anger about their behavior serves as a form of energetic punishment that keeps them bound to your emotional world. Every time you rehearse their wrongs, replay their hurtful words, or imagine the apology they'll never give, you're maintaining a psychological connection that prevents them from achieving the peace they crave. Your resentment becomes their invisible chain, linking them to the guilt and shame they're trying so desperately to escape. The avoidance nervous system remains hyper alert to your emotional state because unresolved conflict triggers their deepest fears about being fundamentally bad or unlovable. As long as you're holding hurt about their behavior, they unconsciously sense that they remain the villain in someone's story, a reality that conflicts with their desperate need to see themselves as a good person who is just confused or scared. This internal dissonance keeps them psychologically agitated and unable to fully move forward. Your anger validates their victim narrative while simultaneously keeping them trapped in guilt. When you're furious about their treatment of you, part of them feels justified in their defensive stance. See, I was right to be afraid of getting too close. Look how angry and demanding she became. But another part recognizes that your anger is legitimate, creating cognitive dissonance that prevents them from achieving the emotional equilibrium they need to truly let go. The psychological paradox is that your negative emotions about them prove they still matter deeply to you, which feeds their ego while burdening their conscience. They want to matter to you, but they don't want to feel responsible for your pain. This creates an internal conflict that keeps them energetically tethered to your experience, checking unconsciously to see if you've healed from what they caused. True forgiveness, not the spiritual bypassing kind where you pretend you weren't hurt, but the genuine release that comes from processing your pain completely, cuts the energetic cord that's been keeping them psychologically bound to your emotional state. When you authentically forgive them, you're not saying their behavior was acceptable. You're saying you no longer need them to be different than they are for you to be at peace. This forgiveness must be real, not performed. The avoidance system can sense the difference between genuine release and strategic forgiveness designed to get a response. Authentic forgiveness feels neutral, not loving or hateful. It's the emotional equivalent of shrugging and saying, "That's just who they are," without any charge attached to the statement. It's complete acceptance of what happened without needing it to be different. The moment you genuinely forgive them, when you stop needing them to acknowledge their mistakes, stop hoping they'll realize what they lost, stop caring whether they're happy or miserable, their nervous system registers the shift immediately. Suddenly, they're no longer carrying the weight of being responsible for your emotional state. The psychological pressure they didn't even realize they were feeling lifts, allowing them to breathe freely for the first time since they left. Your forgiveness also eliminates their unconscious hope that you might take them back, which sounds counterintuitive, but is crucial for their ability to move forward. As long as you're angry, there remains the possibility that your feelings could shift back to love. But genuine forgiveness feels final in a way that anger never does. It communicates that you've completed your emotional business with them and no longer have any investment in the outcome of their choices. The most powerful aspect of forgiveness is that it must be done for your own liberation, not as a gift to them. When you forgive to free yourself from carrying their emotional weight, the release is authentic and complete. When you forgive, hoping it will change them or bring them back, you're still maintaining an energetic connection to their response, which keeps the invisible strings intact. Real forgiveness dissolves the trauma bond that's been keeping both of you psychologically entangled. It allows them to stop unconsciously monitoring your emotional state and frees you from the exhausting work of carrying resentment. This is why many people report that their ex suddenly seems to move on quickly after they achieve genuine forgiveness. You've literally given them permission to release the guilt and anxiety that was keeping them tethered to your shared past. The mirror effect, how your growth triggers theirs. Your personal evolution after the breakup creates a psychological mirror that reflects back to the avoidant, everything they could become if they chose growth over stagnation. Every step you take toward healing, every boundary you establish, every moment of genuine happiness you experience without them becomes an uncomfortable reminder of their own potential for transformation. You become living proof that change is possible, which threatens the comfortable narrative they've built about being stuck in their patterns. The avoidant watches your progress, whether through social media, mutual friends, or their own surveillance efforts, and experiences a complex mix of admiration and terror. Part of them feels genuinely proud of your growth because they remember loving the person who's now flourishing, but another part feels deeply threatened because your evolution highlights their own emotional stagnation. You're showing them what's possible when someone chooses courage over comfort, and this comparison makes their continued avoidance feel like a choice rather than an inevitability. Your healing journey forces them to confront the reality that their problems weren't caused by the relationship, but existed within themselves all along. When you thrive without them, it becomes impossible to maintain their narrative that you were the source of their discomfort, or that relationships themselves are inherently problematic. Your growth exposes their victim story as the defense mechanism it always was, leaving them face to face with their own responsibility for their emotional patterns. The most threatening aspect of your development is how it demonstrates that vulnerability and strength can coexist. The avoidant built their entire identity around the belief that emotional openness equals weakness, that needing others makes someone pathetic, that independence is the highest form of strength. But watching you become more confident through processing your emotions, more attractive through embracing your needs, more powerful through accepting support challenges, everything they thought they knew about emotional survival. Your newfound boundaries particularly trigger their psychological discomfort because boundaries represent the healthy version of their unhealthy distancing. When you learn to say no without cruelty, maintain distance without punishment, protect yourself without attacking others, you're modeling the emotional skills they never developed. You're showing them that it's possible to feel safe in relationships without destroying them, to maintain autonomy without creating chaos. They struggle with the fact that your growth seems to have accelerated after losing them, which conflicts with their unconscious belief that they were adding value to your life, even through their dysfunction. Seeing you flourish in their absence forces them to question whether their presence was actually beneficial or if they were holding you back through their emotional limitations. This realization feels like psychological death because it challenges their fundamental sense of worth. Your evolution also triggers their abandonment wounds in unexpected ways. Even though they left you, watching you move forward successfully feels like confirmation that you didn't need them as much as they needed to be needed. Your independence, which should validate their choice to leave, instead makes them feel dispensable and forgettable. They realize they may have been more invested in being irreplaceable than they were in being happy. The mirror effect becomes particularly intense when you start dating someone who treats you well. Your new relationship reflects back to them what they could have offered if they'd chosen growth over fear. Seeing you receive the love, consistency, and emotional availability you always deserved from them creates a painful contrast that makes their avoidant behavior look like the choice it always was rather than the inevitable result of their psychological makeup. Your growth challenges their timeline for healing and change. They assume they had unlimited time to figure themselves out while keeping you as a backup option. But your progress shows them that life moves forward with or without their participation. You're proving that waiting for them to be ready was never actually necessary for your happiness, which eliminates their unconscious safety net of knowing you'd be there when they eventually got their act together. The most profound trigger occurs when you develop the exact emotional skills they lack. The ability to communicate directly during conflict, to stay present during difficult conversations, to maintain connection while honoring your own needs. You become a walking example of what they could achieve through therapy, self-reflection, and commitment to growth. Your development doesn't just inspire them, it haunts them with possibilities they're too afraid to pursue. Your transformation forces them to choose between personal evolution and psychological comfort. They can either use your growth as motivation to address their own patterns, or they can double down on their avoidance by dismissing your changes as temporary or superficial. Either way, your development has disrupted their emotional equilibrium and forced them to confront the reality that change is possible. They just have to be brave enough to choose it. Your indifference is their kryptonite. The avoidant can handle your anger, process your sadness, and even navigate your love, but they become psychologically destabilized when faced with your genuine indifference. Anger proves they still affect you powerfully. Sadness confirms they matter deeply. Love validates their worth despite their behavior. But indifference, true emotional neutrality about their existence, eliminates their psychological significance in your world, which threatens their very sense of self. Understand the difference between performed indifference and authentic detachment. When you pretend not to care while actually caring deeply, they can sense the emotional charge beneath your cool exterior. Their nervous system remains tuned to the frequency of your hidden investment in their response. But genuine indifference has no emotional temperature. It's not hot or cold. It's simply absent of investment in their existence one way or another. True indifference means you don't check their social media because you genuinely don't wonder what they're doing. You don't ask mutual friends about them because their life has become irrelevant to your emotional state. You don't hope they miss you, regret their choices, or realize what they lost because their internal experience no longer factors into your sense of self-worth or personal narrative about the relationship. The avoidant's entire emotional regulation system depends on knowing they matter to someone, even if that mattering manifests as negative emotions. Your anger gives them importance. Your hurt proves their impact. Your hope feeds their ego, but indifference removes them from the equation entirely, making them psychologically invisible in a way that feels like existential death to someone whose identity depends on being significant to others. Genuine indifference develops when you complete your emotional processing about the relationship and reach a state of neutral acceptance about what happened. You're not suppressing feelings or pretending to be over it. You've actually moved through the grief, anger, and disappointment to arrive at a place where their choices simply don't affect your emotional equilibrium anymore. This isn't about them becoming unimportant. It's about them becoming irrelevant to your well-being. The avoidant can't manipulate indifference the way they can manipulate other emotions. They can't create drama to generate anger, can't play victim to trigger sympathy, can't breadcrumb to inspire hope when you genuinely don't care about their emotional state or behavioral choices. Your indifference eliminates their ability to control your emotional responses, which removes one of their primary sources of power and control. Your emotional neutrality forces them to face themselves without the distraction of managing your reactions to their behavior. When you stop providing emotional feedback, positive or negative, they lose their external regulation system and must confront their own internal emotional landscape without the buffer of your investment in their choices. This can be profoundly uncomfortable for someone who's used to regulating their self-worth through others' responses. Indifference also eliminates their unconscious backup plan of eventually returning to someone who still cares about them. As long as you're emotionally invested in any way, they maintain the option of reconnecting when it serves their needs. But genuine indifference closes that door permanently because there's no emotional bridge left to cross. You've essentially made yourself unavailable for future manipulation or reconnection attempts. The most destabilizing aspect of your indifference is how it reflects their own emotional capacity back to them. They specialized in emotional unavailability, in caring less, in being able to detach when things got difficult. But when you master the same skill and apply it to them, they experience what it feels like to be on the receiving end of emotional withdrawal. This role reversal can be deeply uncomfortable and eye-opening. Your indifference becomes particularly powerful when combined with your visible happiness and growth. It's one thing to not care about them because you're depressed or stuck. It's another to not care because you've moved on to better things. When your indifference stems from genuine contentment with your life rather than defensive numbness, it demonstrates that they've become genuinely irrelevant rather than actively rejected. True indifference doesn't require any energy to maintain because it's not a strategy or a position. It's simply the natural result of completing your emotional business with them. You don't have to work at not caring. You've processed your feelings so thoroughly that caring would actually require effort. You're not interested in expending. This authenticity makes your indifference particularly powerful because it's not performance or manipulation. The avoidant often tries to break through indifference by escalating their attempts to get a reaction. But genuine emotional neutrality remains unshaken by these efforts. When you've truly let go, their attempts to reconnect, create drama, or generate responses simply bounce off your peaceful detachment. You might notice their efforts, but you don't absorb them emotionally or feel compelled to react. Your indifference ultimately becomes the greatest gift you can give both of you. It frees them from the burden of managing your emotions and frees you from the exhaustion of caring about someone who can't show up consistently. This mutual liberation allows both parties to move forward authentically rather than remaining trapped in the psychological dynamics that kept the relationship unhealthy. Breaking the energetic bond that holds them, the process of truly releasing an avoidant from your psychological grip requires more than simply deciding to get over it or forcing yourself to stop caring. You must systematically dismantle the energetic infrastructure you built during the relationship, the mental space you allocated to analyzing their behavior, the emotional investment in their growth, the subconscious monitoring of their well-being. Start by withdrawing your mental energy from their psychological development. Stop wondering if they're learning from their mistakes, growing from the experience, or recognizing their patterns. Every moment you spend hoping they'll change or curious about their healing journey keeps you energetically invested in their internal world. Release your attachment to their evolution. It's not your responsibility or your business anymore. Eliminate the mental rehearsals and imaginary conversations that keep them psychologically present in your daily life. When you catch yourself explaining your perspective to them in your head, justifying your actions, or crafting the perfect response to things they're not even saying, consciously redirect that energy toward your present reality. These mental dialogues maintain an active connection that prevents true detachment. Complete your emotional processing independently without needing validation from them. Work through your hurt with a therapist. Journal your anger until it's exhausted. Grieve the relationship fully without requiring their participation in your healing. The goal is to reach emotional completion about the experience, regardless of their understanding or acknowledgement of what happened. Practice genuine indifference through conscious detachment from outcomes involving them. This means not caring if they're happy or miserable, successful or struggling, alone or with someone new. True release requires becoming genuinely neutral about their life circumstances rather than pretending not to care while secretly monitoring their progress. Remove all digital connections and resist the temptation to check on their life through social media or mutual contacts. Each glimpse into their world reignites the energetic connection you're trying to sever. Create clean boundaries that protect your energy from being pulled back into their orbit. Focus your emotional investment entirely on your own life, your goals, relationships, growth, and happiness. Fill the mental and emotional space they once occupied with present moment experiences and future possibilities that don't include them. When your energy is fully invested in your own reality, there's no surplus attention available for maintaining connections to their psychological world. The bond breaks when you reach genuine emotional neutrality, where thinking about them generates the same response as thinking about any other acquaintance from your past. This isn't numbness or suppression. It's the natural result of completing your emotional business and redirecting your life force toward experiences that actually serve your well-being.